Okay, it's week 4, and apologies for getting this stuff to you guys a bit later than usual. Um, on the road this week, visiting my wife's family. So, again, if you guys need more time, because of the delay on this, just let me know. But the assignment that I'll give you guys this week shouldn't be a heavyweight by any means, so we should be able to get it done in the same time frame. But wanted to get you guys this stuff today. And so 2 more videos. The first one will be going over your guys' work in the last assignment, just real briefly. And then the next one will be going over the next piece of design work, essentially. So first of all, thank you guys for going back and revisiting this project. It's not always the most fun to stay on the same thing, but I thought that, I guess the philosophy for me is that if we're still not quite there on something, on a project, it's totally fine for us to spend some more time on that, which is why I don't like putting out a calendar per se of the semester, because we might have to spend more time doing something, and that's perfectly fine. So, real quick, let's talk about your guys' stuff. And I would like to say that you guys all did something to push this to the next level, and you all tried things that I suggested and went for different solutions. And so I will talk about what you guys did here. So on Bailey's, he didn't have a whole lot that I thought he needed to change. I do think that putting in your own information makes it a bit more fun. So Bailey, thanks for doing that. That was cool. One thing that I think that Bailey does particularly well is the spacing between sections, right? You still could probably space this area out a bit better, but everything has its own sort of breathing room, and like designing with space and how that informs your balance and affects balance is a concept that we'll be discussing and exercising for a while. And so the more that we can get this sort of, just as a design habit for you, the better. So that's great. Also, every text style, body copy and headers and so on and so forth is consistent. So while, it's the same font, particularly, between this and this, there's still a difference in that it's smaller, so it kind of creates its own style. One thing that I think you still could do is add some color somewhere to help maybe someone scan it a bit easier, so it's not just so, black going down beneath the header here. Anthony, this is an example of how making text smaller can just help you build a piece so easily, because if you remember Anthony's, you can go back to the past videos if you want. I think the text was just overall too large, and sometimes we like to sort of try to fill space. But like I've been saying, designing with space, understanding that these empty areas are a part of your design just as much as the actual content. And so starting smaller, you don't want to go too small, of course, but starting smaller like this, sort of it lets you figure out on the fly, okay, how much space do I have to work with, and how spacious can I sort of make this piece? Because, adding spaces between lines, this is called leading, by the way, for those that don't know, and between sections, it really does make this just a lot more digestible, readable, scannable. It just looks nice and clean. And so, Anthony, great job here. Moving your name out here freed up this space quite a bit. Every font style is just really nice, and I like how, I'm not sure if you've done any custom kerning with these fonts, and that means the space between these characters might be a bit wider than what is standard with the font, but consistent across the board. Nice balance of this section to this section, and the space between everything, between boundaries. Okay, guys, that's one thing I'll be kind of emphasizing as we go, is just designing with that space and understanding that this is a great example of how you can still space everything out and fill the page. What that allows you to do is, if you make text smaller, gives you more empty and blank space to work with in your design. Also, great job putting, your name in a very different font so it sticks out. So, Anthony, fantastic job. And, not to put anybody on a pedestal here, but whenever you guys do something that particularly just it knocks it out of the park, I'm gonna do my best to make that obvious. So, good job, Anthony, and let's keep this kind of um, style in terms of space going into future projects. Alyssa, thanks for pushing this to another level here. I think that I really enjoy some simple shapes like this, and the colors are actually they're nice. I actually do really love the color combination there. Two neutrals and one kind of sticks out, but not too much. And so I like that this kind of creates its own kind of, I guess, space for itself, and then the opposite space, the white space left over, obviously creates a larger section for you to design in. So great step forward on this. I really appreciate the effort here. Um, One thing that I will still suggest, you can still make text smaller, Alyssa. And so if you saw what Anthony did, making text smaller and perhaps widening the spaces between lines, which is the leading adjustment. And if I'm saying anything in my tutorials or anything that perhaps doesn't ring a bell, let me know and I will make sure you guys know what I'm talking about and I'll point you to the right tool. But so you could still make text smaller, and what that would allow you to do is maybe space it out a bit more between sections or within its own section, and still allow you to fill the space without really filling the space in terms of like large text. One more thing too, Alyssa, if you could, we still need to try to get away from borders. I know this is kind of tough with emails and websites. It's like impossible. So I have no problem with going, if you need to like sort of break emails or websites in a spot that makes sense, like you could potentially split that there if you had to, or you could just make it a bit smaller. Okay, so make sure that we're not crowding boundaries or borders, and pushing things sort of away from those. But overall, I like what you did here, Alyssa, and thank you for the vast improvement from the first round. Same here. Really enjoyed what Anna did here, because if you reduce the amount of text, sometimes you have no idea what you can do with the space, right? And I think she took some things out, and those things are still good. Those pieces of information that you removed from this design, make sure you keep those. Those are well composed, and you can perhaps use that for cover letters and so on and so forth. But sometimes what people are interested in with resumes is just sort of getting, a scannable summary of all these things. And I like the organization here, and I like your line work. I sort of like, I see in your first logo design and some of the other resume that you did, some unique line work and emphasizing lines. And so that seems to be sort of like a theme that you're gonna, um, use in terms of designs that are associated with your brand, and I like it. So keep going with that. Um, I like this too. This is kind of a nice, simple treatment for your name. You could put your logo perhaps somewhere else on this piece, and it would still, blend together design-wise. Um, and I like how you space things between sections. You could still probably make text a little smaller if you wanted to, but you still have, a lot of space between each section. And one thing still that I might do yet is still try to push this text just a little bit to the right, so it's not crowding this so much. But the thing is, if you are leaving some space here and leaving some space over here, this still works. You're not squishing this text here. And so putting it up against, aligning it against that border is perhaps a style within itself that you are trying to achieve. And so, yeah, I mean, you could push it that way a bit, but I can also see why you don't exactly have to. So, love the color here. Love the fonts you chose, and it's your first one was still solid, but I think this one works a bit better from a design standpoint. So, thank you. see. I have Taylor's? Do I have anybody else's? Test student. I don't think that's anybody. Last one, Taylor. Real quick. Again, I see some of the things that you did to make this a bit maybe spacious on this end. I think that what you did here was you might have freed some space up here at the top, so then you could kind of push this text further north, which is a nice idea. I like that you chose different fonts here for the headers. Makes everything a bit more scannable, so that's a good idea. And I like the font you chose too for the body. One thing you could still do is make text smaller, honestly. And I'm saying that a lot, but you can free up so much space by just starting smaller, and if you have to, go just slightly bigger because it is too small. That is fine, but I want us to sort of practice designing with smaller text and seeing how that creates space for us. Something else too, so let's say you have these here. These are called hanging widows, and they're very, very annoying from a designer standpoint, am I right? Especially when you have just pieces of words there. So making text smaller can solve some of those problems. They can also, what you can do too is you can make the kerning, which is the width, adjusting the width between the characters. That's a adjustment that you can make when in InDesign. It's in the same area as your font controls and your font size controls. It's one of those adjustments there. Again, if you guys need some help finding it, let me know. So try to solve some of these things when you're designing, because when you do, you also free up some more space by taking out this kind of just ugly empty line there. And so we don't want to have these. And I like how you kind of still section some things out here and move this to the bottom. I like that you added some color to that. It does make that tie in with this blue here. One more thing you could still do, Taylor, is let's still do our best in pushing things away from borders and edges, and making text smaller is going to help you sort of solve that. And this does feel a bit sort of squished together when you have this, really close to this section. It does look kind of smashed together. I know we have a visual border between the two with this line, but you still want to make sure that the design overall doesn't seem too congested. So ways you can solve that are reducing the size of text and reducing the amount of content, and making custom adjustments to the font if you have to. So let's try to do that. And again, our main objective moving forward in the next few weeks at least is learning how to free up space and then use that space as an element to the overall design. So that's just where we're at right now, and we're getting better every week. Okay, I can see the improvement from the last resume to this one, and so we're going to take that and then take some of this advice here and step forward into the next design. So we're just going to be exercising a lot of these concepts over the next few weeks, because I think that getting layout, spatial balance, how space affects balance and allows us as designers to do more with it is going to be an important part of your guys' growth into just a lot of the work you'll be experiencing as designers in this day and age. So look for a second video in a second that details the next piece of design work. And don't worry, like I said, it's not going to be a huge project, but it's going to be a fun one. And we're getting away from doing a resume, don't worry, no more of that. But something else to sort of practice spatial things, and also making something representative of the brand and designers that you guys are. So nice job on this, and we'll go forward into the next week. So look for the next video, and if you have any questions, of course, please just let me know. Also, one more thing I forgot. I will be going back and probably adjusting this first resume assignment to a 5 or 10.1, and then making this one the full 25 points. So that way this one gets weighted more than this one does. Just so you guys know, if you see that adjustment, that's why.